afternoon, everybody, and a big welcome to Fruition's Diary of a CIO. I'm Sarah Pawson, and I'm delighted to welcome our guest today, Kerry Jenkin. Hi, Kerry.
Hi, Sarah.
Great to see you. Kerry is the CIO at Great Rail Journeys, a role in which he steers the technology vision for a rail holiday brand across the UK, Europe, and the US. Kerry didn't begin his career in holidays or hospitality. His career spans 20 years working in technology across infrastructure, operations, and technical roles, starting off at Provident Financial, where he led infrastructure, storage, security, and various different teams, and then at TPT Retirement Services as head of IT. I'm really looking forward to digging deep into your career, Kerry. On a personal level, in the little free time that you have, Kerry is an avid runner and has done lots of long distance running. And he also drives and collects sports cars, namely Porsches. So living life on the edge. So hopefully there's nothing I've missed there that's of importance to our listeners, Kerry.
No, I wouldn't say I collect Porsches. I wish I was born into the wealth that allowed me to deserve that. But yeah.
You'd like to collect one. That would be very nice. Sports cars.
Very nice.
Excellent, super. Well, thank you again for joining us, and we will delve straight into talking a little bit about your career journey and how you came to become a CIO. And I know this is your first official role as a CIO. I guess, was there a kind of pivotal moment in your career journey that changed your direction from being hands-on in quite a technical role, because you started off in infrastructure and operations, to moving into technology leadership?
Yeah, I think there was. I mean, I say my whole career has been technology. If I go all the way back, I started when I was 17 in the computer room at Burnley Hospital.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I mean, a long time ago. So I'd always been, that's been my journey, and I was always, very hands-on and done multiple roles. I think, so it will have been at Provident, really. And it was a point where I guess you start thinking, how is IT adding value to the business? This is not just about the technology. You work for business, that's what we're here to do. How is technology adding value to the business? And really, for me, that was the pivotal moment where I thought, actually, I want to go into leadership, because I can either continue down the technology route, sort of architect or something like that, or it becomes much more about what's the business value, how is technology enabling and driving the business? And for me, that was really important. And I suppose part of my brand is very much, it's not for technology's sake, it's about how is it contributing and adding to the business. It's business first and tech second. And that was the switch. And that really is what shifted my focus. And that really spearheaded me on that journey from second line manager to CIO.
And do you think that's something that's just kind of instilled in you as a person, that you were always thinking about how does the role I play in technology impact the broader business? Because not everybody thinks like that, do they? Quite.
No, you're right. And I don't think I did in it when I first set out, when I was back in the early days at Provident Insurance, a technical analyst, not really, probably more interested in the tech side. I suppose you just spend more time in businesses, you become more familiar with them, and you become very engaged in what's going on. You start to question which route's right for you. And I think particularly as you go, once you start taking on the role of manager and looking after people, and then the leadership piece evolves with them, you start to spend more and more time delivering through people rather than doing it yourself. And I think that was probably the transitional point as the teams got bigger. You start to think, actually, this role now, this for me is much more about business, not about technology.
And from memory, there was a point in your career at Provident, wasn't there, where you were very much working on the infrastructure side, and you kind of had quite a significant crossroads where you moved into sort of engineering development without having necessarily a background in that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I guess that was quite a pivotal moment in your career.
Yeah, it was. And I do remember it. Obviously, we restructured quite significantly at Provident and the IT function as a whole, which was quite big, a couple of hundred people, restructured to become much more focused on delivery and transformation versus support and BAU. And I think very much at that time, because of where my focus was on how do we deliver business value, and typically the spearhead of that tends to be the application side. That's really where the business value is coming from more often than not, is the applications and the software side. The infrastructure is more of a hygiene factor, really.
Yeah.
And it was also part of, there's very much a view at the time, is how do we cross-skill the managers at Provident, so everyone gets exposure to more areas, so you become much more rounded as a leader, and it gives you much more ability to add value back to the business because you understand the much broader scope. I think luckily for me, because I'd spent time dabbling and with software development and coding myself, I could at least have some kind of sensible conversation with the development teams, although despite I still had to earn that credibility. You're right, coming in with no experience in software development commercially and then looking at the software delivery teams, have to earn that credibility with them. And a huge amount of it down to the quality of your managers. I went in with managers underneath me who were very strong on that, are already bridging that gap between the actual hands-on piece and leadership element. But I'd say it was certainly pivotal in terms of my focus and contribution to the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And was there a moment in your career when you knew you wanted to get to sort of a C-level position? Was that something that's driven you to progress, or has it happened a little bit more organically than that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there was an element of chasing it. And I think part of it was about being able to have a voice and influence. So one of the things that I was keen to move beyond was, and I think everyone in technology finds this, is being handed solutions that need to be, rather than say, well, wait up, actually let's step back.
Yeah, we
can do this in a different way. There's a different approach here. So it's just trying to be further up the funnel in terms of where those conversations happen. But I think I suppose the hand in glove, really, that gets triggered by how you build relationships with your business peers and becoming that essentially trusted partner that people can come and talk to about when they're thinking about things. Yeah, and I suppose that was as I went on that journey, more and more I started thinking, yes, I was keen to be at the C-suite, which is because you want to be, it's having a voice and being part of business strategy and business direction. It's about moving from technology leadership to business leadership, so no longer being a functional leader but a business leader, and then influencing where the business is going and then layering the technology against that.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you've had lots of battle scars along the way, particularly some of the organisations that you've worked for, highly regulated industries, constantly changing and heavily scrutinised sectors. Was there kind of one project or a kind of decision that was kind of that battle scar that runs deep, but also taught you the most about leadership?
Yeah, I'd say it was the launch of the online business at Provident. So obviously Provident, which was traditionally home credit, that was Barry's focus, that's what it done. Decided we were going to launch the Satsuma and Glow brands at the time, which were all about online. So we took the agent out of the process and it became very much about the business going direct to consumer. And that was obviously electronic remote distribution and collection, again, moving away from the agent model, which was a big shift for the business. And I mean, there are many dynamics to it in terms of, pace of delivery and pace of change. We built and launched the business in 3 months from nothing. So we set the platform up, got the people involved. And I think what's interesting is we were all very involved together. So there's no longer, when you work for a large business, it can be a bit, everyone's really focused on their areas because it's so big. But actually, when we launched those, everyone was just pulling together to get what was essentially a new proposition launched. So you're involved in marketing, you're involved in digital marketing, you're involved in operations, the credit piece, customer recruitment, as well as the technology and the delivery. So it gives you that exposure. And with that came, and it was hard, it was, and certainly in the early days, it struggled. It was hard launching a new proposition and getting it off the ground. It was tough, and there was a lot of tension and some, people quite afraid. There was a lot of work to be done. But in terms of shaping me, I think it had a huge bearing, just in terms of that being very much part of the business and all pulling together to deliver something.
And what do you think it kind of taught you most about leadership going through that?
About the relationships. It's all about the relationships and understanding, trying to build meaningful relationships that are beyond transaction and trying to identify synergies. And, a lot of things like looking for win-win. But I think for first and foremost, business the business outcome is what is the most important. Everything else really needs to ladder up to that. It's very much stepping away from what's in it for me and much more what's the right thing for the business. And if we all succeed, if the business succeeds, then we all succeed.
Yeah, I feel like you pick tricky sectors to work, because I think, you've gone from Provident, who are now Banquist, who are, subprime lend, heavily regulated, constantly changing, to now working in the travel sector. And it's fairly well publicised that the travel sector's had, a fairly challenging few years, starting with COVID and then kind of, with more recent economic challenging times. I guess digital transformation has to be at the forefront of what any travel organisation does. Share something interesting with us about what you're doing in travel right now that people outside of the sector might not realise it's going to really transform how you provide services.
Yeah, so I guess digital, AI and personalisation, really, they're the three are probably the biggest topics and biggest drivers at the moment. Good example, just using an example of a couple of things we've done. So around AI is, so we have about 320 tour managers that run our group escorted tours, and they are absolutely pivotal to the outcome and success of those tours. They're really what make or break it. They're providing the support to the customer, leading the tour, and if there are problems, logistical problems with the tour, they're the ones on the ground who have to deal with it. So their influence on the success of that tour and the experience the customer gets is absolutely paramount. And we have 2,000 departures per annum going to over 40 different countries with different cultures, languages, sightsee things to do. So matching those tour managers to those tours is a challenge, because they're all individuals, they've got their own skills and preferences, their own availability, and the wrong tour manager on the wrong tour can have quite a big impact.
Yeah.
So we developed an algorithm, as it's called. Think of it as match.com for tour managers, if you like. And that essentially runs and allocate using data, and a continual feedback loop is allocating the right tour managers to the tour. And I was hugely successful. That was fantastic. And it was really the fascinating piece was going on the journey with the tour manager. It used to be a manual process done by a team. It's really, really heavy lifting. When we first introduced it, there was obviously some nervousness and frustration around the tour managers. They were uncertain about it. We were shifting the process, and it took us a while. We took them on a journey over a couple of years, but actually we hearts and minds, and we're in a really good place with it. The outcome's been fantastic in terms of how it's raised satisfaction with the tour managers. That's one. Another one is how we're using AI to predict rail pricing. So we have to predict 18 to 24 months out what the cost of rail travel is going to be. That is pretty difficult. It's a black box with no certainty, and it's very volatile. But what we do have is 18 years worth of transport data, and we've been able to use AI on top of that data to accurately forecast what rail prices are going to be in 18 to 24 months, which again has been fantastic in terms of how we've been able to go to market with the product, really. So there's some good examples. The big thing obviously travel's doing is going to be personalisation, so personalised experiences in terms of the comms you get, the products you see as you visit websites, use apps, how they're personalised and tailored to each individual. And then really in the flexible independent market, so holidays that you go on yourself and build yourself, is going to be how AI is building those. So at the moment, as we see, search shifting, people searching in using AI rather than searching, so ChatGPT, that's creating a holiday for them, so they're able to go and book it. Travel websites are now starting to do that, and then the next thing is going to be AI booking it for you. So that whole, essentially having AI agents that will be able to build and book you a holiday. And so there's huge advancements and investments going on in that, really. And
what's the typical demographic of your customer base?
So 65 plus, really.
Yeah.
So they're very much, the typical GRJ customer, 65 plus, and the reason they come on holiday with us is the group element, tour manager element. So quite often the people that they're worldly travellers, so they've got a lot of travel experience, but they've reached a stage now where they want the social element and they want the tour manager, so someone to provide that safety net.
Okay, and I guess that type of holiday and type of travel, there's a fine balance with the kind of nostalgia of that type of holiday with innovation as developments continue. How do you, I guess, modernize that experience for that customer without, I guess, losing the magic of that part of their journey, that some of the traditional elements that they really can imagine and enjoy?
Yeah, it's really, I think it's customer first. And it's really
Yeah,
about being customer first and thinking about the customer's journey with us and how we're adding value to them on that journey. So not doing, again, technology for technology's sake, or not just doing, let's digitize something or do something in a modern way. It's not adding value to the customer. So a good example is we digitized all of our travel documents, but we still sent them as PDFs because that's what the customer wanted.
yeah,
And so it's really just down to that. It's just trying to understand what is the customer behaviour, what do they want, and what they're doing, and how do we make sure that we're delivering to that. One of the most interesting things about our demographic is they're very, very omnichannel. So they want to engage with us across all channels, and they want to do that both between and during separate interactions. So, if you were to look at the demographic of 20-year-olds, everything's going to be online, everything's going to be digital. But our customers don't want that. What we see is they want to use the website, they want to use apps, but they want to speak to the contact centre and they want to email. So you see that they want all of those different, they want to be able to use all of those different channels. So really a lot of what we do is about how do we make that experience as frictionless as possible. So if they want to engage on lots of different channels, we need to make that as frictionless as possible for them and give them a joined up experience. So I think it's just very much about thinking customer first.
There's a lot to think about, though, isn't there, when you're running a business that's like that, because you can't go too far with your, I guess, AI digital transformation journey, because then you'll alienate some of your customers, but you also can't get left behind. Is there kind of some sort of technology pain that across, I guess, the travel ecosystem that you'd love to fix that perhaps you can't, or maybe not that a technology pain, and kind of some sort of flaw in the process that you could fix with technology, but can't see your customer base?
I think it's more about it's just about what's right for it's business first, and we could say, well, we made the whole thing, we made the whole thing digital. If you're coming at it from a pure technology perspective, you made the whole thing digital. Let's just drive everyone online. Let's just try and remove as many people as possible. But that's not what the customer wants. And I think that boils down to the crux of it, really. You've just got to do what's right for the business and right for the customer. I think it goes back to something we were talking earlier. So that's about it's not about the tech, it's about the customer and about their experience and how we're facilitating and enabling that. And it's about what's right for the business that facilitates them. Because, technology isn't always the right fix for everything. Sometimes it's just a bit of process improvement.
Yeah, you're definitely carving out a niche for yourself, though, of taking very traditional businesses on that digital journey from a customer perspective, from going back to the work you did at Provident, when replacing, I guess, essentially people knocking on people's doors to collect payments, to taking that digitally. That's, I guess, it's quite unique what you're doing in your experience.
Yeah, and I think it is, and I think what's fascinating about it is how much the customer like. We've got a fantastic product and the customer really engages with it. I think it's such an important thing, that deep relationship they have with us as a brand and a product and what we're giving to them. And again, we're a very, very people-centric and people-focused business, because we want that to then, as our contact agents to deal with our customers. It's really important that they have the same belief and feeling about the product and the service they're giving, because that's what the customer wants. So it means we get really great engagement. It also means we get great feedback from the customers.
Yeah. Talking about, I guess, people then, and people that are working within your organisation and in your teams. I know you've led people through mergers, integrations, significant change in organisations, and that spans months and years. How do you keep your teams motivated and, I guess, believing in the mission and sticking to the plan when change fatigue sets in and there's a lot going on?
I think, ultimately, it's bringing them on a journey and making it relevant for them, and what's real for them and what's in it for them. It's one of the things that springs to mind. I remember it Provident, when we were launching the digital business, there was a lot of direction change in terms of what we were going to do next, based on, there was a lot of test and learn, quite fast test and learn, and that can be quite, say, draining for people. But really, the key is explaining the why and making sure they're bought into journey. It's about providing that sense of social safety, isn't it? So, people they feel like it's speak out, they can have views, they're listened to, they're on board, and making it safe, that safe environment for them, and then explaining why we're doing the things we're doing, bringing them on. And you just got to build that. You just got to get that sense of team, really, and get everyone in it together. And that's got to be the key. You need that cohesiveness, really, and people sort of all pulling in the same direction. Yeah, and I think that's as I've gone on my journey and sort of had bigger teams, that's probably been the most important part, really, is making sure they're all bought in and people are listened to and supported, really.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is key to being able to do that, to actually provide that continuous communication and making it a safe space for people to feel that they're supported and listened? What's key? Is it kind of you as a leader? Is it your leadership team? How do you make that work?
I think it's all of you. I think it's being visible and present and aligned, empathy. But yeah, you as an individual, at the end of the day, the culture starts from the top.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. How you portray and handle yourself, and then what you instill into your leaders and how that then flows down into the teams. That's the key bit, really.
And as you've developed your leadership skills, which it's quite tough, isn't it, when you get to a certain level, because it's almost expected that you know what you're doing, and I guess every day can present a different challenge. But I guess reflecting back, is there kind of one soft skill or kind of leadership quality that you now really value that perhaps you didn't appreciate early on in your career?
Yeah, I think empathy. I think putting yourself in the shoes of others is probably one of the most important things to be able to do, and really important. And I think, that more than anything, putting yourself in the shoes of others and really understanding things from their perspective. Consider a reel off a load of catchphrases, but really, really active listening and just understanding what's going on for others and putting yourself in their shoes so you can really relate to it, regardless of what level they're at. I think that's probably one of the most important things.
That's a really good answer. It's not always something that comes naturally
to me.
Particularly to people in leadership roles that have maybe progressed and been really focused on their careers. Do you have to kind of keep yourself in check to take a step back and think about how does that make someone feel and what's their perspective?
Yeah, and it's not my natural stance, so it's something I've had to work on. I think, fake it till you make it. I think. But you do. You have to constantly, at the end of the day, you're only as good as your people.
Yeah.
And you can have the best people in the world, but if they're not bought in and engaged, then they're not gonna stick around.
How did you learn that? Was that a light bulb moment, or did you start to change in terms of how you operated as a leader?
I'm lucky, really, that I've had some great mentors.
Okay.
And plus, I've had, I'm fortunate to have had various rounds of leadership development. So you see the recurring themes.
Yeah.
And so I've had that, and so I've been told, this needs to be better. Yeah, and it's one of those things, isn't it? And it's good, again, if you can build the right trust and relationships around you, people will tell you. So you need people, you want people to tell you your blind spots, people to tell you, you could be doing that a bit better. And I can sort of reflect on, I think it will have been started probably when I was at Provident, some of the relationships I had there with my managers, very honest feedback, and some of the support I had from my bosses and the mentors feeding this back. So give you that share. And it's one of those things, isn't it? You try it and you see the results. It's like, oh, that's much better. There's a you sort of see, yes, this gets better results, people in a better place. That works.
Yeah. And if you had to seek out those mentors, or has that always been something that the organisations you've worked for have kind of provided for you?
Yeah, it's mostly been line management. I think I'm quite lucky in that I've worked for a string of people who've been very supportive and have done that leadership and done that guidance. It's interesting. My previous 3 bosses and my current boss were all, interestingly, CFOs who've become CEOs.
Right.
So, obviously very, very capable and experienced and highly achieving people. So that's been very helpful. I think, before that, sort of worked with some great people. So I think really it's just that. For me, I've maybe just fallen into that, but I've had a long line of great mentors, really.
Yeah. Is there a standout person that's kind of really impacted your career? Would you not want to embarrass them?
No, I won't get about. I'd say where I am now. So Dave, CEO of Great Rail Journeys, fantastic. He's the one who took the chance to promote me to CIO.
Yeah.
And so that's certainly this later stage of my career, I think it's been very inspirational.
Sure. And do you provide that mentor role to other people inside or outside of obviously inside your organisation? You're going to do that as a line manager, but throughout your career, have you mentored anybody that isn't under your direct leadership?
Try to where I can, not specifically. What I've tried to do, I guess, though, as well, is people who've maybe worked for me in the past and then moved on, if I've had the opportunity to help out where I can. But I've always made sure I'm contactable, and if people want to talk and discuss stuff, then I'm there to try and help, really.
Yeah. And I guess coming on to that, to your own personal development, where I guess it's kind of your responsibility to kind of look after your own development when you get to a certain level. Having great mentors and bosses is great, but you have to invest in yourself, don't you, as well?
100%.
How do you stay on top of technology, AI, things that, you know, you're moving in and operating in such a fast-paced sector? How on earth do you as an individual stay on top of all of these things and stay sharp and curious in a world that moves faster than you can perhaps keep up with?
I think it's really networking and just being out there and finding out what's going on, I think. And there are probably two sides to it. I think, you know, I try and go to events, webinars, things like that, get involved in stuff, involved in the IT leaders network, go to, you know, speak to people there, go to some of those events, and then just networking with peers, see what other people are working on, what their focus is, what their challenges are, and just sharing stuff. And I think that really, that as an ongoing cycle, you've just got to keep doing. And that's probably, I think that's a combination of things there. What that does is not only do you get a view of the market, but if you talk to your peer group, you get a view of what's relevant in your area. It's like if I talk to the travel CIOs or the travel leaders, understanding what their challenges and focuses are, and, you know, what have we got, or can we share things, share ideas on how to set things forward.
Yeah.
I think it's being out there, really, and you have to, you know, you have to be active at it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, isn't it, to invest in that networking side of things outside of your day job. And I think quite often people don't realise the value of the network until they really need it. That's quite often the case. And when you've kind of, I guess, neglected that time, it can suddenly become really apparent. What else do you do? Are you a reader? Are you kind of somebody that sort of has a daily habit of reading certain things or books? Or
I wouldn't describe myself as a big reader.
Some people have like key resources that they go to in your...
No, probably not specifically. ChatGPT or Gemini. I think that's probably there. No, I wouldn't have said. I mean, we all know the normal websites you can go to. You just pick up bits and pieces, don't you? There's plenty of mail shots that get sent from various places, and you pick up bits from that. You know, little individual bits. There's usually someone trying to sell you something, regardless of, you know, it's an interesting thing, is it? The cold sales call, half the time, not something of interest, but it might be some little interesting tidbits in there that need exploring, you know, just pick up on bits and pieces. I think it's just trying to be very aware and open, being receptive to your point about being curious.
Yeah.
If someone's got something to say, listen to it. See what they've got to stay humble and listen to what they've got to say. If you've got an opinion, an idea, or a view on something, because there might be something in there that's useful. Yeah.
Good. It's good advice, actually, isn't it? Just to never shut things down straight away. Do you get sales calls? Is that such a thing anymore? Or sales emails and LinkedIn approaches?
Yes, all of it. Yeah, all of it.
So I think every leader has an element of self-doubt at some point in their career, or when they're working on something that's particularly demanding. I know you're a really confident character, but I feel like nothing would faze you. But what do you do if you get an element of imposter syndrome in your head, or that voice shows up of self-doubt? How do you handle that as a leader?
Good question. I think probably a couple of things, really. I think you need to be able to not switch off, but at least disconnect. You need your escapes, whatever your outlet is, to allow you just to reframe, step away and reframe. It's like the running for me is a big thing. And it's much about the mental side of it, of just getting out there on my own, running maybe for a couple of hours, and just allows you to digest and reframe, put things into perspective. It's funny, sometimes I would say some of my sharpest ideas just come from that.
Right.
I think, you need a support network. You need the people around you that you can talk to and discuss how you're feeling about stuff. Just, those kind of things, really. That's probably always been my approach. Just try and put things into balance.
Yeah, I think that ability to step back and reflect, and like you said, whatever your outlet might be, whether it's running, read a book, I don't know, whatever, drive your car, you have to have that ability, I think, to do that, and not always try and fix things in the moment.
No, absolutely. And sometimes you just need to take a step away and look at, just go and look at something else. But I think you need to be able to manage the stress and the pressure. You need to be able to have whatever mechanisms you are, within reason.
Yeah.
But whatever those mechanisms are to keep yourself centered and mindful, I think that's the key thing, really.
And On that note, what are the key things that keep you up at night as a CIO?
It's funny because that I've been asked that question before, and there are two things really. So cyber, a breach, that's the never-ending arms race of trying to stay secure. So that's a constant. I think I'd be surprised if anyone didn't say the same thing in our line of work, that they've got that as a constant thing. And I think the other thing really is people having an engaged, say, happy team. Like I say, you're relying on your people. You're only as good as them. So for me, it's really important that the team are engaged. And so, again, that's probably a constant think about: is everyone happy, engaged? Are we doing the right thing? Are they in a good place? Are they part of what we're doing?
Yeah. Just wrapping up then. It's been really, really interesting to talk to you. And you've probably had maybe not always the most typical route to becoming a CIO as lots of maybe your peers have, and which I think makes you a really interesting, rounded person. There's lots of people that are watching this podcast that will be kind of middle leadership, getting into senior leadership, and really thinking about their aspirations to become a CIO. Finally, what are the kind of key pieces of advice you would give to somebody who's maybe at that level and looking to progress?
I think there are probably two elements to it, really. One is the business. Being a CIO is about being a business leader, not a functional leader. So it's understand your business. The role, the technology piece of it is making it business aligned. It's about business value, business outcomes, how it's achieving. So it's know the business, understand the numbers, understand what's important, what your focus, what your key areas are, what the problems are. It's all about that. It's all about the business. And I think the other one is the relationships. Like I said, it's about having those strong, beyond transactional relationships with your peer group, all trying to pull in the same direction. I think really you've got to build those relationships and be part of that team that's driving the business forward. And therefore, the two go hand in hand. Really, you need to have the right, that business mindset and understanding the bit, so you can have the right conversation. So you're not having a conversation necessarily about a technology solution. You're having a conversation about, I don't know, what's going on with this product. How are we getting to market? What does our digital acquisition look like? You need to be able to have those conversations because that's what's important to the business, and the technology laying it behind it, really.
That's really important advice given the current state of the market today as well, isn't it? For the likelihood is if you're going to progress to be a CIO, that will be within your current organisation that you work for, as opposed to going to get a new job, because there is quite a lot of supply at the moment of high quality CIO candidates. So I think that's really critical advice for somebody that's within their organisation looking to step up like you did. Is there anything else you did at GRJ that kind of put you in a really good position to get that opportunity? You did, as opposed to just...
No, but I think those are I'm just reflecting back on the journey I went on, really. And that was those were the things really. I built building good relationships with the peer group, and then just how are we adding value to the business? What's the business trying to achieve? What are we here to achieve? And how is it adding value? Starting with that mindset and really just pushing on. And those are probably the two things really. And I think, I'd say that's why. And so that's a route I took, and I'd say that's probably the advice I'd give to anyone really. Sure. And I think you're right. I think within your own organisation, it's going to be the most obvious step really. Because you're really in the right position in terms of the business, the people, so it's the obvious route really. Yeah,
I think people need to remember it. You've got to go and seek it out as well, haven't you? You've got to go kind of invest the time to develop yourself to be ready for that opportunity in the way that you did.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well. I think you've got to ask yourself why. What's the reason? What's your goal?
Yeah.
Because your goal ultimately needs to align with the business goals. So whatever reason it is for you to become CIO, if it's just the money and title, probably not the right answer. Because that's a very one-sided view. You need to be aligned with the business, what outcomes you want to get. If your goal is to make the business a success, well, perfect, because that's everyone else's goal as well. Therefore, that's the right mindset to have, really.
Amazing. Kerry, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today, and it's been really interesting to find out about your career and progression, and thank you again.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Cool.